Today's story is literally Korean Jujitsu Kaisen. We have shamans, curses, and good fights. The only difference is that the protagonist is a mega instead of a Dori. But I assure you that the guy is good. In this story, all kinds of negative emotions can accumulate, giving life to creatures known as malevolent spirits. They are invisible to normal people, but bring death or even excruciating pain. Sometimes they are threatening on catastrophic scales. Few humans can naturally prevent them. Only exorcists are capable of this, still present today, but disguised. A boy holds a phone and informs his uncle that he has arrived. A crowd observes a dead man. The malevolent spirit has already fled, and only a few clues remain. The boy named GOP Punram informs that he did what he could, and now it's up to his uncle and asks if he forgot. Leaning on a long sword, he holds the phone and says it's already time to go to school. He asks if he thinks high school is something silly like him. Down below in the crowd, a man with red hair catches the boy's attention. As he covers his head with a hood, he wonders why that face looks familiar, but he decides to let it go and climbs down from the wall where he was. The red-haired man is smoking a cigarette. Someone calls for the agent. It's already the 8th victim in the Heart of Soul. And just like the previous victims in the Beast incident, there are no common traits. The wall is painted with red liquid and signs of struggle. It seems it really was a vengeful spirit. The dark-haired man is scared and wonders if it wouldn't be better to call an exorcist or shaman. He tells the red-haired man that Go's nephew can see ghosts, but the red-haired man says he doesn't care about those superstitious things. The dark-haired man insists that it could be of great help and that he can help solve the cases. Gong Pungrim is at school packing his things, and someone asks if he's leaving. A boy says they're going to play ball and asks if he wants to join, but he says he has work to do. The protagonist always runs off when his uncle calls, and the boy says he can count on his fingers how many times they played together. And he also hasn't submitted his career research that the teacher asked for. So, Gong sits down and starts filling out a form quickly. He hands it to his classmate and asks him to complete it. On the form, he only filled out that he wants to be a salaried employee, but wrote nothing else beyond that. As Gong leaves the classroom, his friend warns him that it will probably be changed and asks if there's really nothing he wants to do, but he continues on his path without even looking back, thinking in his head that it doesn't matter. He passes by the other students at school living their normal lives, and Dong knows that he has never lived his life the way he truly wanted. Not once in a landscape filled with trees and bushes. A small river cuts through the area. We see a modern building with very large windows. Pungrim is walking and passes by a parked white car. He asks his uncle if they have visitors since there's a different car parked there. His uncle, as a company, calls him and says he arrived at the right time. The man in green asks if he is Punim and approaches. The protagonist recognizes him as the police officer from earlier, and the guy approaches, saying he has changed a lot since they last met. Scratching the back of his neck, Pungrim says there must be some mistake because he doesn't remember having met him before. Then the man explains that they used to play a lot when he was much younger, which is why he wouldn't remember. He tells him that he is the younger brother of Pungrim's father, meaning he is his uncle. This information shocks the protagonist, who has flashes of memory from his childhood, and someone saying that this man would ruin the family. Strange people with malevolent looks saying various things about the poor little boy. An elderly woman lamenting and clutching a portrait, wondering why someone like that was born into the family. The poor little boy cries and says that he is not like this. It is the monster inside him. People start to hold him and pull him away from his uncle. He screams, calling for him. He says that his uncle knows he is not like this and begs his uncle to help him. But his uncle Lee turns his back and decides not to help. These memories make him remember that this is really his uncle, and with a stern expression he asks what that man wants with him. The other uncle is just laughing, watching everything, and says that he is disqualified for this. Lee shouts for him to be quiet and says that he will interrogate him separately later because it is very suspicious to raise a child in that place. The man with white hair asks why he is only looking for the boy now. Asking if he suddenly missed his nephew and casting a serious look at the man, he asks if he came to ask for Pungrim's help for the investigation. Pungrim asks if anyone has helped him lately since he saw the clues to the Beast incident through the boy. It seems that this power the boy has, which was rejected and seen as threatening, is now necessary. Trying to apologize, Lead explains that he heard his sister-in-law had traveled and no one knew the boy's whereabouts. But lowering his head, still filled with resentment, Pungrim says he has nothing to say to that man. And turning his back on his uncle, the protagonist continues on his way, followed by the man with white hair. The two walk together, and the man holding the fan looks back a few times. He gets close to Pungrim and tries to be kind, saying that he must have gone through complicated situations, and then he asks him what he decided to do. With a gentle look, he asks if Pungrim already knows the whereabouts of the culprit. The protagonist continues with a deadpan expression showing no emotion. Night falls. It is a beautiful full moon night. In a police station, a man asks if the officer is not going to leave work. Lead explains that he is about to leave, and the other man says he will leave first, but if he sees any ghosts, he should call his nephew. Angrily, the man replies that things don't work that way. Time passes, and he remains in the office alone, observing all the files. There is no progress in the investigation, which is why he feels this way. He shouldn't have gone after Pundram, but Detective Park insisted. He questions what the boy could actually help with. Even with rumors circulating, everyone is quite sensitive about the death of his brother. And now that they had that meeting, he probably hates his own uncle. So, it's better to get back to work. Speaking of which, he takes a look at the autopsy results and sees that they couldn't detect any signs of tools or objects. How is it possible that they managed to twist and pull the neck like a bottle cap? And a very bad feeling runs through Leet's body. He feels a sinister chill. He feels as if there is something on his neck and puts his hand on the spot. Then that feeling makes him uneasy. He stays alert to his surroundings, and he looks to the side in hopes of seeing something. But again, that sensation on his neck, he puts his hand there again. He wonders why he is feeling that chill right on his neck. Looking at the monitor, he thinks that maybe he is feeling this because he just saw the autopsy results. But upon looking more closely at the screen, he can see his supernatural hand holding his head. And when he looks up, he realizes that he is not alone, but a bizarre being is right above him. Lead is pulled up completely, knocking papers over and letting out a scream. As he stares at the hideous face of that creature, he wonders if it is a monster or a hallucination. And with the desperation of that situation, he begins to feel his throat. The door of the place he is in opens quickly, and Pundram appears, jumping towards where the monster is holding the poor man. He places both hands on the back of the aberration. With a thrust, he delivers a precise kick to the creature's head, causing it to release Lete. The man falls to the ground, now free from the clutches of the apparition. Holding his neck, Lead asks how the boy got there. The boy asks him not to keep asking questions. While looking around, he asks if his uncle wants to capture the culprit. The monster approaches with huge red teeth. Pundram says that the culprit is right there in front of him. Incredulous, Leet asks what he means and begins to sweat with fear. The bizarre monster is approaching the protagonist, and Leet thinks he doesn't want to capture the culprit at the cost of his nephew's life. But the man is paralyzed with fear. His legs won't move, and he screams for Pundram to run away. The devil opens his mouth full of teeth and lunges at the boy. Our protagonist now holds a sword, his eyes shining a different color. As he adjusts his sword, he explains that these creatures feed on emotions. Lead is still paralyzed, sweating, and terrified like a baby. Looking at his uncle, Pundram says that just as students and police officers have their duties, this is the duty he has. The creature screams shrill and moves even closer to the boy. With the sword in position, the boy prepares, and with a simple movement, he finishes off the creature. Lee quickly gets up and runs to his nephew, asking if he is okay or hurt. With a dry and unenthusiastic expression, he says he is fine. Looking around, the police officer realizes that the place is a mess, completely destroyed. With an awkward smile, he says it's no problem. At least the boy is okay. But then he notices the boy's expression and asks why he looks like that. Pundram says he did everything he asked and that he doesn't need to pretend to be concerned since he was absent for years anyway. Lee turns his back to tidy up the place and starts trying to change the subject, but another voice interrupts their conversation. Someone steps on the shards on the floor. The man with white hair says it would be good to clean up a bit. He explains that reinforcements will arrive soon and that it's better for Lee to come with him. With his arms crossed and smiling, the mysterious man says he seems to have many questions. The police officer looks a bit worried, but the man says he deserves explanations. And while the man points with his fan, Leet asks him to be straightforward. The culprit behind the beast incident he was hunting was an anomaly that the mysterious man was taking care of. Clenching his teeth, Leet asks confusedly what he means by an anomaly. They are entities born from the dark side of humans, usually called demons, but resembling monsters. Crossing his arms, the police officer reflects on the new information, but he finds all of this very strange. Monsters are usually from fantasy stories. These demons feed on human emotions, and there are those who have the power to confront them, like our Pundram, the boy who just demonstrated his powers. He is exceptionally powerful, even among other exorcists, which is why he couldn't hide his abilities when he was little. Then Leet starts to remember the past, when Pundram was tiny and said he had a monster under his bed. But the man didn't take his nephew's complaints seriously and teased him, despite that when he said there was a monster under the bed, the uncle would go check. But little Pundram would say he wouldn't be able to. And once again, now as an adult, the boy said that again. His uncle can't. While thinking about everything he is hearing, Leet asks one more thing. He points his finger at the mysterious man with white hair and strange clothes and asks who he is. Embracing Pundram, he says he's like a father to him, is also an exorcist, and is the head of the order. Leet asks if exorcists are like Ta's priests, and the man says it's kind of like that. For the police officer, this kind of thing doesn't make sense, but since he saw it with his own eyes, he can't help but believe. Pundram says he will check ahead. The man with white hair wishes him to sleep well, but Leet asks him to wait a bit, and somewhat awkwardly, he wishes good night to his nephew. The man thinks they should improve the relationship between uncle and nephew. Pundram is sitting at a desk, fiddling with some stones. He holds his head with one hand and moves the little stones with the other, looking a bit bored. Then he starts pointing his finger at a round stone, and that stone suddenly transforms into a sculpture resembling a little bunny. The boy observes it with serious eyes and little expression. He taps the sculpture, which now looks like a human face, and it spins, but suddenly he punches it with his fist, destroying the stone. He shouts that he can't concentrate on his studies because of him. Lee feels his ear burn as if someone is talking about him. Discontent, Pundram wonders what family ties mean and what kind of joke that is. He stacks several stones, one on top of the other, forming a tower, and he thinks that even though it is a biological relationship, it can be destroyed so easily. It may seem solid, but in the end, he is alone and can only trust himself. Looking at his arms, we can see that the boy has several scars, and he knows that things nowadays are different from when his father was present, and there is nothing to worry about. The door opens, and a dark-haired man enters calling for Pundram. He says he thought he was sleeping and asks if he made all this juice for Daddy. But the little boy replies no and stretches out his arms, asking to be held. He says the juice is for the visitor, and the man asks his wife who they will be receiving today, but she says no one is coming. Laughing, the man asks if it's for the imaginary friend, the rabbit or the bear. But the irritated little boy says he is not imaginary. The man feels the force of the little boy's punch. Putting his hand to his face, pointing outside, the little boy says the visitors are already out there. His father turns around, still holding him, and looks in the direction he pointed. A huge red eye is staring at them through the window. The protagonist wakes up from this sinister nightmare in shock. He is lying in his bed and breathes slowly to recover. The daylight enters through the window, brightening the room. It is a new day in the city. People walk by, living their lives. Our protagonist rubs his eyes, still a bit sleepy. He wonders why he is having these dreams from when he was younger again. Pundram thinks it might be the presence of his uncle pretending to care and turning his routine upside down. But he believes that if he helps him a little, he will probably leave him alone soon. And anyway, the man with white hair promised that he could stop being an exorcist when he became an adult. As the boy walks to school, someone bumps into him. He apologizes as he got distracted. But then when he pays more attention to who bumped into him, he sees that it is a strange girl who didn't even look back after bumping into him. His friend comes close and asks if the girl didn't seem troubled in some way. Pundram punches his friend in shock, and he says he didn't think he would take it so seriously. That girl is Jean Shin from the first class. Her sister left the game on her own a few days ago. They weren't very close, as she is a prodigy. She ended up belittling her sister for being useless. With a look of disdain, Pundram wonders how his friend knows all this, but he believes that even without being very close, losing a family member must be heavy. The protagonist begins to reflect on his friend's words and what losing a family member can mean. Pundram starts to believe that it is because of suffering these losses that other people are sometimes so nosy. They walk behind the girl, who continues walking hunched over, kind of looking at the ground. But looking closely at the reflection beside her, one can see an obsessive creature walking alongside her. The creature has long black hair, red marks on its body, and seems to be guiding the girl back at the house of the mysterious man with white hair. He explains to Pundram that they have a visitor at home today. He thinks that lately many visitors have been coming. A desperate man screams that he needs help very much. Placing his hands on a table, he puts his hand on his heart and asks them to save his youngest daughter, Kron. The light-haired man asks them to calm down first, gathering the letter of termination of life and belongings of his eldest daughter. The father hands the things to the exorcists. Pundram is serving coffee to the visitors and hears that Chiron has been acting strange since her sister's death, but has been getting worse. Then they realized it was not just simple depression. The girl doesn't even seem like herself anymore. The exorcist asks for more examples of the girl's actions. The father explains that she does not respond when they talk to her. She just keeps practicing gymnastics nonstop. Even when they try to stop her, they can't. The mother tries to hold her daughter, but she simply falls as if she has fallen apart. And it really seems that her body is not under her control. Her gaze is empty, like that of a corpse. They have already tried to take her to the hospital, but they said there is nothing wrong with her, so this is the last place they can trust. The exorcist continues reading the letter attentively. The letter seems to carry a heavy feeling of guilt and inadequacy. The girl apologizes for being incompetent over and over again. Then, raising his hand and smiling, the exorcist explains that they will do their best to resolve the situation. The parents don't even know how to thank him, crying with emotion and expressing their gratitude many times. With a very reassuring smile, the light-haired man says he has seen cases like this before, so they don't need to worry too much. Pungram's eyes go straight to the letter, and he thinks about what it means to be incompetent and about how many times she repeated the phrase, "I'm sorry for being incompetent." Then the exorcist talks to the protagonist and says that based on the content of the letter, it seems that the sister died because of this incompetence, and that since Pundram attends the same school as Chiron, it seems like a call from God for them to help save her. Then the exorcist asks the boy to do him a favor, and during class he approaches the girl. He watches her from a distance as she holds a potted plant, and he has no doubt. Based on the letter, he is sure that the demon that killed her sister is this very incompetence. In contrast, Jean Cron is super promising and successful, so she is far from this so-called incompetence. The phone starts ringing, breaking the silence. It's Leet calling to ask if he has a moment, and Pundram asks if any other strange cases have occurred. The man with a frightened expression asks if his nephew is really a shaman. He then explains that there have been 6 cases of server disconnection in the last 3 days. Leet says he tried to talk to Gwaker first, but he said it's the boy who handles that department. Normally, demons move on to the next victim who has similar emotions, and it's strange for the girl to be affected just for being a sister. In any case, Pundram believes that another demon also intervened in this case. Leet asks if there's no chance it's the same bastard. Maybe it's just an illusion, but the protagonist notices a different movement and says he needs to hang up. Several people are close to Chiron, making malicious comments about her. The boy senses this different aura, everyone acting strangely, and begins to approach. As Chiron walks, 2 girls come up to her and say to each other that she couldn't compete even if she had a broken leg. Pundram shouts for Jean Shin to be careful. The girl looks back with that empty and strange gaze. But before she can move, an arm stretches out to her and pushes her mercilessly down the stairs, causing her to drop the potted plant. One of the girls who was behind her on the stairs is responsible for such a horrible act. The pot flies far away, spilling some dirt along the way, but a very agile figure with purple hair passes by the 2 girls and rushing down the steps, manages to reach Cron, holding her carefully so she doesn't fall down the stairs. The pot ends up falling and breaking into several pieces, but the girl is safe. The figure with purple hair is apparently a girl who managed to save Chai just in time. Regaining her composure, the girl says they should be careful because it's dangerous to play near the stairs. The 2 girls who are behind Chiron are trembling and wonder who this girl is. They whisper to each other if she isn't the girl who was transferred to Class 6 yesterday. Her name is Lee. Sopong Grim sneaks a little to try to see what happened and manages to spot Sang. He goes to the top of the stairs to check on Chiron. But when the girl passes by him, she warns him not to interfere. With a serious look, Pundram addresses her, asking what she said, but smiling. The girl says it's because she is the one who will take care of this. He asks what she means by that, but she ignores him and keeps walking. So, Mang continues on her way as if nothing happened without looking back. The protagonist can't quite understand what that girl meant. Pungram's friend is in kinda uniform and asks if he isn't going home. The boy is leaning against the wall and sitting with a discouraged expression and says yes. His friend asks what happened for him to be so distant since early on. But Pungram's gaze is directed at Cron, who is practicing her exercises. The boy's friend ends up interpreting that he is interested in her. He blushes, and Pundram asks him to stop talking nonsense. The boy is lost in thought, wondering if that girl with purple hair is also a demon hunter. If so, this is the first time he encounters a demon hunter who is his age. Putting his hand on his face, he wonders why he is so bothered by this. And then he realizes that quite some time has passed, and the girl is already leaving. Pundram asks his friend to go ahead and starts to get up. Then he is quite convinced that the boy is interested in her. The protagonist begins to follow the girl, asking where she is going. It is already dark, and Cron continues on her way unaware that she is being followed. Pundram is being very careful not to be noticed by her. Moving slowly, she then quickly turns a corner going out of sight. He decides to quicken his pace so he doesn't lose her. But upon turning the same corner as the girl, he realizes that she has mysteriously disappeared. Not much time has passed, and he came right behind her. He doesn't understand where she could have gone. But then a piercing scream catches his attention. He starts running, imagining that it could be a trap. He recognizes that voice as Jean Chiron's and shouts her name while running. The boy hurries as fast as he can, leaping in the direction he heard the noise. But when he arrives at the location, he is surprised. The student from before is in a fighting stance and seems to have punched Kron. Several people are on the ground. She looks back and sees Punrim asking if he is still around. While Chirin is still down, she says she told him to stop interfering, but it seems he didn't listen. And from Cher's body emerges a horrendous creature. So Mang says that since he is there, he can quietly watch the show. The boy is surprised by her bold attitude. He knows that many exorcists tend to go overboard, but he thinks it's absurd that she has harmed innocents. He wonders if this brat is someone who really shouldn't be messed with, even falling a bit behind. Punim stands up and takes a battle stance. He moves a little closer to the girl slowly, and in a matter of seconds, she moves away from him, quickly retreating. Punrim is confused when he hears her say that this is useless. Even though he is well prepared to fight, it won't be enough. With a somewhat sly expression, she says that since it would just be a waste of effort, she ends the matter there. So, Mang screams and struggles, asking to be let go. Punim is dragging the girl by her clothes, asking her if all of this was just a show off, but now she is back down. With tears in her eyes, she says she didn't expect the spirit to be so disgusting, full of slimy legs that keep moving. It looks like a spider. She can barely look at it without feeling nauseous. Putting his hand on the back of his neck, the boy repeats what she had said before, telling him not to interfere because she could handle it. The sudden loss of courage leaves the protagonist quite disappointed. But while the two are talking, a blow from the bizarre spirit suddenly interrupts them. So Mang barely manages to dodge, falling to the side and avoiding being hit. Pungra manages to grab some of the unconscious people on the ground and protect them. But then when he turns his eyes back to the enemy, he is startled. He remembers that spiders are not considered insects, but rather arthropods. And this only frustrates the girl even more. But casting a charming glance at the protagonist, she explains that if he finds a cute girl in danger, he has a duty to help her. And the boy looks dumbfounded upon hearing her call herself cute. But at least he finds one thing to feel more at ease. If she can attack the malevolent spirit, then it means it isn't that powerful after all. As he prepares his sword, he thinks that he wouldn't want to lay hands on the enemy without first knowing what emotions it was born from. Every spirit has its own way of being defeated, and this one has a human face resembling someone he knows. It reminds him of Jean Kron, but perhaps a bit more mature. And then Pundram remembers having seen a picture of her older sister, and she and the spirit are indeed very similar. He also recalls that the feeling that fed was incompetence, and that this spirit must take on the face of its target. So Mang interrupts the boy's thoughts by launching herself at him, asking if he heard what she said. He tries to free himself from the forced embrace, and crying, the girl asks what he was thinking for so long. The spirit has vanished, and she was trying to say that she heard a sound of something crawling on the roof. Pundram notices that it is suddenly getting much darker. He is also hearing something strange. Worried, he quickly turns to look at what is behind him, and stuck to his clothes, he notices a kind of web. It's as if the place has suddenly been taken over by this web, and he is impressed. That's why it was so dark. All the windows were covered by this web, and there is no sign of the malevolent spirit. He also can't move anymore and shouts for the girl to do something. But she is all wrapped up in a cocoon of webs, immobilized than he is. Furious, he says that this wouldn't have happened if she had taken care of everything from the beginning. Then Pundram gives the girl a lecture, saying that she should have let him handle it if she knew she wouldn't be able to. She needs to understand that an exorcist has the duty to protect the lives around him. Unable to bear hearing any more lectures, the girl screams that she also wants to catch that thing and that he is not the only frustrated one there. While still stuck to the wall, the boy is annoyed by her scream. And suddenly in the middle of the courtyard, Chirin appears, illuminated by a spotlight. The two exorcists don't understand what is happening there. So Mang remembers perfectly knocking the girl out, but she is there awake. She starts to move, but it really seems like she is completely soulless at that moment. The girl begins to move like a professional gymnast, getting closer until she is right next to Pundram, and she throws a strong punch toward his face. He barely dodges it. This leaves her hand completely injured, and the exorcist is shocked by what he sees. He continues to dodge the attacks, shouting for her to stop because she's going to break her hand. But even with her hand completely wrecked, the girl continues without hesitation. Looking more closely, he notices that the girl's hand is being controlled by webs. He doesn't know how to act. He can't use his strength since his hands and legs are tied. He could also burn those spider webs because they are made of fine metals like a jigsaw. He urgently needs to think of a way out of this. Then, thinking of something, our protagonist calls out to S. The boy asks if she can cut those webs since her golden ability is more powerful than that. It turns out that each exorcist has powers from one of the 5 elements. Some use them as physical strength and others with tool transformation. Exceptionally, there are cases where an exorcist has more energy, but those are rare cases. Each spirit has characteristics based on the emotion in which they were born. Once the hunter understands this characteristic, it becomes easier to defeat them. If the hunter approaches the spirit without understanding this, they may end up losing or suffering serious injuries. In the case of this spirit, the power is a sharp spider web, so Mang's powers to increase physical strength would be very useful. She assumes that she can indeed deal with those webs, but asks if he doesn't want to take all the credit once she frees him. Pundram asks how she will fight alone with a creature she finds so disgusting that she can barely get close. And he warns that Sharon's body won't hold up much longer. Then the girl convinces herself and uses her power to transform her arm and tear the web cocoon, concentrating all her power in her fist. She stares intently at the enemy, and she says that this is for snooping on someone else's schemes, and quickly she manages to destroy all the traps. Looking back, she shouts that she did what he asked. So if he loses, she won't just stand by. And sarcastically, the protagonist replies that it's not her, and that she should watch the show quietly where she is. He looks at the ceiling and can see the spirit, which believes that hiding in the dark is an advantage, but it will be no advantage against our boy who prepares for the strike. He leaps towards the spirit, stuck to the ceiling, with his sword ready. That movement leaves So Mang impressed. Her eyes shine, and the boy's sword begins to shine brightly, illuminating the entire place. As it shines, he prepares a precise cut that slices through the monster's abdomen. The malevolent spirit screams in agony as it is hit by the attack, and that light becomes so strong that it makes Sang unable to see a foot in front of her. Punim finishes the attack, posing on the ground, still holding his sword. The spirit detaches from the ceiling and begins to fall as well. But even with a huge cut in its abdomen, the creature doesn't stop and charges at the boy with its enormous legs. He realizes that this creature is indeed strong, completely contrasting with being incompetent. Now he believes he can understand how the creature came to be, but he can't grasp what it is doing. In any case, he questions who has never felt this kind of emotion, feeling so helpless that they want to die. And Pundra manages to make a horizontal cut, splitting the spirit's body in half. The cut is clean, quick, and precise, slicing through the air. Punim sheaves his sword while the spirit is split in two. Looking at Song with his yellow eyes, he asks her to wait. He asks her not to dare leave, and feels like he is there, reminding her of her mother giving orders. The boy says he is trying to hear her apologies, even though he doesn't feel like talking either. He wants to know the details of how she knew about the spirit, so he can explain it to the clients. Pointing at him, she asks if the spirit they hunted wasn't an inferior complex. And with a puzzled expression, he says he can't believe she didn't know. But then the girl decides to start explaining everything from the beginning. She was an exorcist serving in Chun and came to the location to locate this inferior complex spirit. It was a tough time because of the battle against that spirit. These malevolent spirits tend to target humans overwhelmed by extreme emotions like the incompetent one seeking someone at the peak of helplessness. But that's not the case with inferior complexes, which instead of making people their targets, they cling to them. So the person the spirit clung to wasn't Jean Chaiwa, but her younger sister who was the target of comparison. At another moment, she remembers her colleague saying that there must be at least one or two people in conflict with the spirit's target. They wonder if it would be the less experienced coworker or a high school classmate. Meanwhile, Sang just observes everything from higher spot. Her colleagues are strict in saying that she isn't helping and hasn't helped at all since she arrived. She had a bad reputation among her peers for bringing bad luck whenever they encountered malevolent spirits. But she believes there is no one better than her of her age. She decided to come alone to Seoul in search of this inferior complex, to prove that she can defeat one with her own strength, and also to make those colleagues who spoke ill of her eat their words. But Pundram ended up taking that away from her. So besides being there without telling her associates, she still hasn't completed it. Therefore, with no more hope, she asks for help from the protagonist. With teary eyes, she says she will help him catch the incompetent spirit. Pundram continues with that fed-up expression while she insists. He believes that being so audacious is a talent in itself, and asks why he should help her. She looks puzzled, and he says it's more fascinating to see that she thinks her help is useful to him. The order he received from the client was to help Kron, so he doesn't care about the inferior complex she mentioned. Moreover, he says he has nothing to gain from it. But the girl interrupts him and says he does. Making a sad face, she says he would gain the trust of a pretty girl. Crying and kneeling on the ground, she says she will give him a month's allowance. Then memories of having attacked innocence, being scared of the spirit for being disgusting, and crying come to Pundram's mind. He turns to her and asks if there is any way to know where this incompetent spirit is. So Mang becomes hopeful and asks if he likes her, but he doesn't appreciate the joke. She stands up and says she doesn't know for sure, but asks if he saw the news today. He denies it, and she tells him that the news has been everywhere. Then the protagonist remembers to check his phone and realizes he has some missed calls. Leet sent a news report about a woman's attempted self-elimination and several messages for him. Pundram looks surprised to see so many messages he hadn't responded to. He had been so busy with Sharon's case that he forgot to check his phone. Pundram already knew he would have to find his uncle again. But considering having to gather this girl and his uncle in the same place at the same time, it means there will be a meeting of 3 people at once, and that raises the boy's pressure. He shouts for Song to take care of Kron and the people she knocked out and leaves the place. In another large and beautiful building, we see the Cross Cafe. The protagonist and his newest partner, against his will, are having a drink. He looks at some cards while she is distracted, sucking on her straw. The cafe door opens quickly and someone enters the place. This catches So Mang's attention as she looks in the direction of the person who entered. She nudges Pundram and says that if there is a spirit for fatigue, that guy will be its first target. But the person is Leet, who greets the 2 young people and approaches them. He asks if that young lady is a friend of Pundram, and he says he thinks so, mentioning that she is the exorcist he mentioned earlier. The girl is annoyed by the way he introduced her. She introduces herself as a rising star of the time with great skill and beauty. But cutting to the point, Leet asks if they want to order something first, mentioning that the sweets there have a great reputation. Pundram interrupts his uncle and says that they don't have much time and are there for work. The girl doesn't understand why the atmosphere is so heavy if they are nephew and uncle. He shows the letter and the victim's biodata. She mentioned incompetence, just like the last letter, and during the rescue, she seemed to be in an unstable mental state. She appeared to have no will, but looking at her medical records, there was nothing wrong with her body. And GT. Fortunately, she didn't have any other dangerous actions after the attempt, but is safe in the hospital being monitored, and they're quite lucky because they found a suspicious target. The police can't provide all the necessary help, and the young lady also says she would love to help. She praises Leet, saying he looks like a police officer straight out of the movies. Pundram sigh while So continues talking about her uncle. She says he even smells like cigarettes like the police officers. He becomes worried and says he used a lot of deodorant, causing the girl to laugh. The 2 continue their relaxed conversation, but Pundram interrupts them with a grim face. He says that just keeping in touch with the target is enough, as this is not something a normal person can handle, and that everything he has said so far could have been said over the phone. So what is the reason for the meeting? Joining his hands and making a sad face, the uncle says there is no particular reason. Leet apologizes and says he would like to see his nephew's face from time to time. Moreover, the boy is doing a very dangerous job, so he can't help but worry. But Pundram doesn't let his heart soften and says that because of his uncle's whim, the target might have died at that moment. He continues bombarding his uncle with sharp words. And So Mang gets angry at his attitude. With a cutting look, he says that they both only care about their skills, so the least they can do is not get in the way. Then he ends the tense atmosphere by asking to go to the bathroom. The air becomes so heavy that even silence seems to scream. She is furious and says she would like to flush him down the toilet, but Leet asks her to be patient with the boy. He explains that Pundram finds it hard to trust people, especially adults. But he was a brilliant child. Then Leet lowers his head and apologizes on behalf of his nephew, as he is the reason he has become this way. Even knowing the risks of this job, he still put his nephew in the position he is in today. Now more aware of the story, Sang understands that the situation is indeed very heavy. But the police officer says he is happy that his nephew has made a good friend who is also an exorcist. It's a shame he can't do anything to change the situation, but he asks the girl to take care of Pundram. Although he seems like a very skilled exorcist, he is not all that he appears to be. And in the bathroom, Pundram can't control the tears running down his face. Deep down, he is just a sensitive and delicate child. A message appears saying that the patient's condition is not bad, and they were able to reduce the staff. Pundram is having a juice while reading the messages on his phone. He is impressed by his uncle's speed and insistence on keeping in touch, even after what he did in the cafe. But on one hand, he thinks it's better this way than having to walk on eggshells. The boys in the protagonist room asked him to join them in a game of dodgeball. He says that his body isn't in shape right now, and that maybe later he will join. This makes him think about the last time he played dodgeball in his life, but he believes it wouldn't be very fair for him to join since his skills are different from those of his peers. Pundram is convinced that exorcists shouldn't be allowed to participate in these games since they would have to focus on not using all their strength, which can be tiring. The boys are still talking among themselves, trying to find another member, and the protagonist continues to think that sometimes he feels envious seeing people fitting well into the routine. A loud shout saying "final blow" reaches the ears of everyone nearby. So Mang is holding the dodgeball and ready to throw it with all her might. She manages to hit 3 unfortunate souls in one go, and she celebrates happily for achieving such a feat. The protagonist observes that he is perplexed that she doesn't care at all about measuring her strength. Punim discreetly gets up and steps on the ground, releasing a lightning bolt that goes to Sang's feet. While she is distracted asking for the ball, the lightning reaches her and forms a small stone in her path, which make her trip and fall face first to the ground. Everyone around becomes concerned. She is still on the ground, but as she gets up, she seems to understand what happened. Furious, the girl comes to argue with Pundram, asking if he wants to fight her. Cynically, the boy makes a pitying face and asks why she didn't go to the infirmary after a fall like that. This reaction leaves the girl speechless, and he adds that he will take her there. He says that her face looks a bit messed up, and she asks if she hurt her face. So unexpected is Pundram's attitude that she asks if he ate something spoiled. She screams at the top of her lungs that there is no need for that, but he insists on taking her. Now, the girl has a bandage stuck right in the middle of her forehead. It was indeed Pundram who put on because the nurse is always sleeping due to a hangover, but that's not why he brought her there. He tells her that his uncle contacted him, and the girl perks up at that. Tonight, when there is a break between the police shifts, they're to go to the hospital and find the target. They will go after this incompetent, but this time he doesn't want any innocent to get hurt. In other words, no one else is to be put in danger like she did last time. She says he could have texted that, but he reminds her that he doesn't have her number. But looking at her with a cold expression, he says he doesn't want to because he doesn't want to jinx himself. Despite that, he writes down the exorcist colleague's number at his phone. But teasing the girl, he says he will delete the contact as soon as they complete the mission. The plan is simple. As soon as they arrive at the hospital, his uncle will distract the security guards. And in the meantime, he will use his energy to turn off the security cameras and enter the room where the target is. The idea is to lure the spirit to a place with as few people as possible and get rid of it. He says it sounds easy enough, and she somewhat agrees. Punim heard from his uncle that the incompetent isn't as hostile as his name suggests. To be honest, the boy thinks it would be easier to do everything alone, but then so Mang would complain again. The two argue about him looking at her and thinking about how useless she might be on this mission. She doesn't understand how two people from the same family can be so different since his uncle is so nice. So, how can that kind man have such a grumpy and annoying nephew? She asks him to be a little kinder to his uncle, because when he went to the bathroom at the cafe, the man almost cried. Pundram asks her to stop talking as he only met the man for one day. So, he can't know much about him. To poke at the girl's self-esteem, he asks if she is so clueless, not only in hunting, but also in interpersonal relationships. The nurse interrupts their acidic conversation, asking if they could return to their rooms. Both feel embarrassed by the situation and leave the infirmary with a blank expression. They are worried that the nurse overheard everything they were saying. Punim then arranges to meet at 10 p.m. and continues on his way, but she asks him to wait. So, Mang doesn't understand how she can be nice and take care of such a pain in the neck like him. As if he had heard the girl's words, the protagonist's uncle says he has no idea either. His co-worker asks if something is bothering him, and then he notices on his friend's phone that the nephew hasn't replied to any of the messages or returned the calls. He asks Leet if they haven't met recently, and since they are family, why is he acting this way? But the police officer explains that it seems their relationship worsened during their last meeting. They didn't discuss any heavy topics, so his co-worker thinks he is simply hated by his nephew. This leaves the police officer outraged, and he starts hitting his co-worker with pieces of paper. But to try to help, the man says he should understand his nephew's needs, and he suggests that Leet take Pundram to an amusement park. He explains that it is a place very loved by students, and you can see many in uniform at these parks. Leet can imagine his nephew with a softened heart and very excited in a place like that. And in his imagination, he sees himself as a caring uncle who says he earns money every day just to entertain his beloved nephew. The daydream ends with him seeing his nephew asking for churros and the two walking hand in hand, super friends. After all this imagination, the uncle seems quite excited about the upcoming plans. He hops out, thinking that the idea of the park was great, but his co-worker continues. The man steps away before hearing the last piece of advice, which is to leave the park as soon as he buys the ticket. But even so, he hopes his friend will manage, and then he returns to the work topic. Leet mentions that she is improving and can even take a walk alone now. It can still be a bit concerning to let her go out, but it is somewhat of a relief. She is usually surrounded by other people there, and he believes she has already made friends. But we can see a disturbing scene of the spirit gathering several patients on the roof. This malevolent spirit is gigantic and seems very strong. It has marks on its arm that resemble paintings, but these paintings transform into things that look like moving eyes. The time to put the plan into action has arrived. Night falls at the city hospital. Checking the time, It is already 10 p.m., exactly the right moment. Leyte arrives at the agreed location a little late and apologizes. So Meng is excited and says that working at night is cool and sophisticated. The police officer explains that he has already dealt with the guards and they can proceed, just being careful with the cameras. But before the young people start their work, he asks Pungrim to be careful. The boy looks at him with a serious expression and asks what he is worried about. He asks his uncle to stay back and not increase the number of targets for the spirit. So man can't help but notice how the boy is always insensitive and cruel with his words while the uncle is just being kind. She stares at the protagonist with a strange smile, and he asks why she smiles so much. The waiting room is empty, probably due to the hour. Punim activates his ability with his foot on the ground, and a shadow grows on the floor, spreading rapidly throughout the place. This shadow manages to cover all the security cameras on the floor. He warns that hospitals are full of people with high levels of helplessness, so they need to hurry before the spirit gains strength. Their fourth target is room 614. So Meng is impressed with the boy's energy. She had heard about this before, but she didn't imagine it would be so much energy. In some rare cases, exorcists can possess two energies, but she thought that was just a rumor. But Pun possesses Yin, Yang, Earth, and Gold. She can see this with her own eyes. She is amazed that such a case exists. Even in the association, she had never heard of one. As they go up to another floor, she wonders if he really isn't part of any association. How can someone with such talent not be part of one? The girl is so lost in her thoughts that she doesn't look ahead and bumps into Pundrum. She curses at him, warning him not to stop like that. But Pundrum noticed that their target's room has its door open. This could be a bad sign. So, the two run towards the room, and the place is empty. Not a sign of the woman they are looking for. Both are quite worried. Lita checked earlier and seen that she was sleeping. Due to the temperature of the blanket, she may have left recently. The boy says that if she left the hospital, her uncle will know. Since they are in a hurry, they decide to split up to search for the spirit. They agree that as soon as one of them finds it, they will call the other immediately. Pungrim silently hopes to find the spirit first. He knows it's much easier to defeat the target if no one else is in the way. Running through the hospital corridors, he knows this method is the most efficient. The boy passes by a corridor and observes the room next door. At the reception, he sees a man in hospital pajamas walking like a zombie. He is not the target he is looking for, but he is acting very strangely. The protagonist wonders how it is possible that he has the same symptoms as the target. So it's quite possible that there are two targets at the same time. He decides to silently follow the man passing through the doors of the place. But something shocking appears when he turns the corner. More than 10 patients are acting that way, walking like a horde of zombies. It's the first time he sees so many targets of a single spirit. The question that remains is where they are going. They are all going up the stairs. Looking at a sign on the wall, he understands that they are heading towards the exit. It's the exit that leads to the hospital roof. And while our protagonist reads the sign, a woman is falling from the top right next to him. He remembers a conversation he had with Guaqiang about the forces of spirits. The man asks him which spirits he fears the most. Pund imagines a gigantic spirit and says it's the big ones. But Euron explains that the ones they need to pay more attention to are the emotional ones because they spread very quickly. Since emotions are not limited to just one person, Pungrim was extremely quick and managed to catch the girl who fell in time. He pulls her through the window and brings her back into the hospital. It was by a narrow margin. The boy is panting. After witnessing this scene, he has no doubt that they are in great danger. If the spirit manages to reach all these targets, they will all jump off the roof. So, first he needs to block their path quickly. He uses his ability to create a large barrier at the door leading to the top. But the patients begin to lean out of the window he broke to save the girl. Poor Pungrim runs to stop them, holding onto their pajamas. But while he is busy holding two, a third one prepares to hit him with a chair, and it strikes the poor protagonist right on the back of the neck. That blow was precise and hurt. Now he has a bruised face and is very angry. In a surge of rage, he grabs his sword and starts to draw it from its sheath, but he doesn't have much time to complete an attack as some patients approach. All of them have an extremely sad expression. It even tugs at the heart. Punim notices the expressions of the people and becomes thoughtful. He closes his eyes, decides to take a deep breath, and tries to be more patient. His sword suddenly falls to the ground. More people approach. One of the patients grabs him by the neck and pushes him against the wall with force. He forgot that he is only strong against spirits. But since they are humans, he doesn't have much strength. A feeling of frustration floods his body, and he begins to feel disheartened. The image of his father comes to his memory. He starts to think that he won't be able to do it. While he is restrained by some people, other patients begin to climb through the window. He sees that scene and his eyes widen. By analyzing the feelings he is experiencing, he realizes that the target of the feeling of incompetence is not those patients jumping, but rather himself, who is feeling completely incompetent right now. The boy then begins to concentrate and think about everything he is feeling, but a girl's voice interrupts his thoughts. So Mang complains that they agreed to call as soon as one of them found it, and calls him stubborn. But while she manages to save 2 patients, she asks who is saying he is useless. The girl manages to bring some patients back on her back, and says that Pundram is not useless, just a coward. With all her charm, she approaches the patient holding the protagonist and asks him to let him go. She holds him by the neck and asks that from now on they resolve things with words. Looking at Pundram, she asks him to tie that guy up as quickly as possible. The exorcist uses his ability to create a vine to restrain the patient. Everyone is trapped and safe and will remain in quarantine until the spirit's effect passes. Pundram asks So Mang why she looks so smug. Feeling self-important, she says that if it weren't for her, there would have been true chaos, and asks if he has nothing to say. Brave, the boy asks what she wants him to say after all. And raising her voice with a firm posture, she wants him to ask for her help. He looks indifferent, but she says she honestly knows that sometimes she can be clumsy, but she is a true exorcist, and with so many targets, he won't be able to handle everything alone. He agrees, and suddenly she changes her expression, looking at the boy, incredulous, and in a burst of honesty, he admits that he underestimated her, and that he really needs her now. This is so surprising that she becomes suspicious that he has been replaced by an imposter. From an exorcist perspective, they must always try to save as many lives as they can. Putting her hand on her chin, the girl says he is right about that. And then the protagonist states that there is one important thing she can do. The door leading to the hospital roof opens. The malevolent spirit is in a fetal position, but it is enormous. It has already managed to take control of several patients there who have vacant stares. So Mang is impressed by how many people are there, and Pundram tells her to remember what he said. She smiles and agrees, but thinks she could never forget such an absurd plan. Pund wraps some logs around his body and talks about the energy of wood. It is the most suitable when it comes to restraining someone. He knows there are more people on the roof because the girl in the photo is not among those present. The wood will be used to restrain the patients, but while he does this, he cannot move. So, Sang will have to take the initiative and deal with the incompetent. She's a bit worried about having to do this alone. Punim tells her to stay calm because this spirit is not that strong. It only influences people and leaves everything to its targets. He may have gained a lot of power because the hospital really had many people for him to brainwash. But he asserts that exorcists are much harder to influence than normal people. So as long as the girl keeps her head in the right place, nothing bad will happen. The 2 heroes are ready to face that threat. Those influenced patients sense the presence of the exorcist, and they all start to move like true zombies. They seem to want to protect their influencer at all costs. As planned, Pundram crouches down and begins to use his wood energy ability. Several pieces of vine and would start to spread out in the area, heading towards the people. They grab the patients by the torso, immobilizing them. Everyone there is contained and placed away from danger. The malevolent spirit does not move while its targets are lifted by the whips. Punkram shouts the order to his partner, telling her to start acting. Even more vine whips appear from the ground. Meanwhile, So Mang leaps towards the spirit that is among its mental slaves. Jumping towards the monster, she tries to calm herself, thinking that despite its enormous size, its vision is poor. And if she can manage to kill that terrifying spirit once and for all, it would be a wonderful achievement for her exorcist career. But as she gets closer to the spirit, her confidence begins to waver. Ambiguous thoughts start to pass through her mind. Fear of failure in times when she didn't succeed. As she approaches the enemy, the eye on her arm opens. And upon facing that giant eye, she feels something strange in her heart. A voice in her mind asks how there can be an exorcist in this world who is afraid of spirits. With her arms, she seems to try to shoo away those thoughts and voices, but they continue to torment her. The voice says it is sure that if she causes a great uproar and lets the spirits free again, the association wouldn't stay still, and the thoughts seem to take shape and grab her, saying that all that self-confidence is just a shield to hide behind. So Mang puts her hands over her ears, trying to ignore it at all costs. The voice insists on saying that she is useless. Punim shouts, asking what she is doing. The spirit is now standing and approaching her, ordering her to give up and repeatedly stating that she is useless, gathering all the strength she has. So Mang denies all of that and prepares to throw a punch. She manages to align the thoughts that have taken shape, saying that she is not useless. Screaming, she asks what they know about her and continues to destroy them. Furious, She says they're just talking nonsense. But a voice shouting her name brings the girl back to herself. The thoughts in humanoid forms now closely resemble the people she knows. They're her seniors, and they say she has no talent to be an exorcist. One of them asks if she could handle it if someone died because of her. Those words pierce the girl's heart like sharp knives, leaving her in shock. Punim tries to get her attention, saying she is just daydreaming. The patients being restrained start banging their heads against the vines holding them. This is not good. They are beginning to hurt themselves, and they have little time. The boy screams with all the strength of his lungs the name of his partner. He says that enemy is just a weakling, and she herself said she wanted to prove she is capable, and he adds that she is not weak. Because of this, he decided to trust her completely this time. The malevolent spirit is getting closer to the girl. Punim shouts for her not to let him down. So Mang, who had her hands on her face, pulls them away and starts to feel something strange. She begins to wonder what could be the reason for her obsession with achieving something. Her legs become wobbly, and without balance, she falls sitting on the ground. She does not understand why her thoughts are screaming so loudly. Leaning against the wall with her head down, the girl starts to think about why she wanted to become an exorcist. Her eyes are glazed over, devoid of shine, as if she is in great mental suffering. She cannot remember why she decided to be an exorcist. On a beautiful day, a woman talks to her husband about their daughter's brilliance. The couple with their little girl discusses her achievements, like always being first in class and also excelling in sports. But the man thinks it is an exaggeration. He heard about a child considered a genius who mastered 5 languages before the age of 10. Looking at his phone, he explains that it is not uncommon for parents to confuse their children with geniuses. The woman loses her temper and says she also wants to enjoy the advantages of having a talented child. But while the couple argues, a strong wind passes by them and takes the man's cap away. The little girl with purple hair watches her father's cap flying away. Gathering her energy in her arms, she leans over the bridge railing. While holding onto the edge, she manages to catch the cap, leaving her parents speechless. With her little feet, she supports herself on the edge of the bridge. Looking at her father, she shows him the cap and warns that he dropped it. The 2 adults are incredulous at the little girl's display of skill. A news article shows a picture of the little girl hanging on and holding the cap. Someone says they will take down the article. An adult hand holds her little hand with energy and says that this is the golden ability of enhanced physical strength. A man with long hair looks at the little girl and says he is eager to see what will happen in the future. The parents are shocked and ask if their little girl is special, and the man confirms that she is. The man explains that he would like to ask her to start training with them at the association. But since the association is secret, they need to keep this information confidential, and then the little girl walks hand in hand with that long-haired man. Innocently, she plays with an action figure while walking. The man asks if Sang likes heroes, and excitedly he tells her that he also likes them, and that he is a defender of justice who saves people. He continues by saying that if she likes them so much, she should try to be one too. So Mang asks if she's capable of that, and the man says yes, he can see that in her future. She holds and waves a little white flag in training. So Mang always came in first place. Even though she was small, she was extremely strong. Her opponents couldn't touch a single hair on her head in races. She always finished first by a wide margin. The adults also showered her with praise, saying she was not like other children. Everyone was eager to see her grow up, believing she would be a great exorcist. The word genius had always been present in her upbringing. She was always praised, but in her memory, Sang hears a voice calling her seasoned with several thorns and a tongue. That nightmarish vision seems like a true nightmare. A hand grabs her clothes and pulls her back away from the creature. One of the girl's partners shouts that if she's going to be a hindrance, she should just stay seated in the corner. He heard she was a promising intern, but what good is that if she can't put her knowledge into practice? The girl looks at her hands and realizes she is trembling a lot. She can't believe she is in that situation. Feeling powerless, a boy with blue hair is surrounded by trainers all talking about him. That boy, only 15 years old, managed to capture 3 spirits with just one hand. But one boy says that not all new exorcists are like that. For example, Sang, who is his age but is not talented. One of the trainers calls the girl over to talk and says he will be honest. He tells her that if she continues to perform this way, there is no reason for her to become an exorcist. She maintains a disheartened look, and the man asks if she would prefer to switch to a training group, and she ends up hearing from the trainers that they were mistaken about her, thinking she would be a prodigy. Totally defeated. So Mang begins to think that all that training has resulted in her actually being useless. And it is incredibly cruel to think of things that way. The girl is still backed against the wall, sitting with a vacant look. Punim continues shouting to get the girl's attention, saying that if she keeps this up, she will die. Looking at the girl like that, he wonders if her mind is being corrupted. Unfortunately, the protagonist will not be able to deal with the spirit while managing the patients. They are also starting to hurt themselves with the vines. He tries to think of what he can do, but while he is thinking of a way out, he loses focus and one of the vines releases one of the patients. Pund realizes what has happened, and the woman who is freed begins to get up. She is still under the influence of the malevolent spirit with a blank expression. So Mang looks in the direction of the patient who was released. They lock eyes, and the girl has a heart-wrenching look, her eyes filled with tears. This affects the girl a bit, and she starts to lose herself and other thoughts. She begins to remember a conversation at the association about why she wanted to become an exorcist. Her colleagues are chatting casually about their reasons, and one of them says it's because of his salary. He looks back and asks Mang what her reason is. She is cuddling a character pillow and happily sucking on a lollipop. So Mang replies that it's because they said she is a prodigy at this. And she adds that prodigy heroes tend to be very strong and can save many people and then also receive many compliments from those people. But So Mang's colleagues say that it's not necessary to be a genius to achieve those things. You just need to do your job well. Now the spirit is very close to Samong and the patient preparing an attack. And then she realizes that she was so focused on trying to achieve something that she forgot her main objective. With her arm charged with energy, she manages to block the enemy's attack. The girl thinks that she doesn't want to be just like her colleague Pundram. Not everyone is born with that kind of talent. Even if it were offered to her to be like him, she wouldn't accept. Now the girl has come back to herself and is countering the spirit's advances. Jumping to dodge, she prepares a kick with all her strength and determination. The kick is so powerful that it manages to rip the spirit's arm off in one go. Shalmang's my. Her expression has completely changed, and she comes to the conclusion that she only wants to be someone that people need. The malevolent spirit that just took the hit loses a bit of its balance. Meanwhile, several vines begin to surround it. Pundram uses his energy to attack it as well and help his partner. He is trying to concentrate on several things at once since the enemy is completely surrounded. So Mang seizes the opportunity to go after it. She is confident and knows what she wants even if she can't become the best exorcist. And with a powerful punch, she drives the enemy's head down with all her might. Its pseudo even ends up with a hole after that blow. So Mang's powerful punch creates an intense noise in the area. Losing balance, it falls backward completely. The girl adjusts her feet to finish the blow and secure herself on the ground. Gracefully, it lands and starts laughing as soon as it does. And jumping and celebrating. The girl shouts that she did it while Pungrim frees the people who were trapped. She asks what the boy is doing and that she needs to report to the association how wonderful she was. The sun is already rising and the malevolent spirit is disintegrating as the day begins to dawn. Comparing with the photo, the protagonist manages to find the girl they were looking for. And he realizes that he will need to go to school soon without even a moment to rest. But before he continues what he was doing, So Man calls his attention with a smug look. She says that she is not like him and thanks him for everything he did there. And then a bit more seriously, she asks if what he said before was really true, the thing about her not being that weak or something like that. But making that usual indifferent face, Pundram replies that no, it was a lie. So Mang is shocked, and he says that he has already finished everything he needed to do there. So he is leaving. She shouts for him to wait, and he ends up saying for them to try not to see each other for a while. Looking back before leaving, he says that now she can handle everything on her own. Punim jumps off the roof without any fear, and she leans over the railing to look. Seeing the boy walk away, she asks if this is just a thought in his head or if it's for real. Back at Gairong and Pungram's house, the day is clear with some clouds in the sky. A book rests on a table. Someone was in the middle of reading. 2 days have passed since the incident at the hospital. The protagonist is enjoying a rare moment of peace, resting in his chair. Neither Sang nor her uncle has looked for him so far, so everything is quiet and calm. He decides that this weekend he will dedicate himself to his studies. But before he could fully concentrate, the doorbell rings. He goes down the stairs while the doorbell rings insistently. Wondering who it could be on a weekend morning. Hoping it's not another guest, he opens the door slowly. And So Mang surprises him, greeting him excitedly. The girl is holding a suitcase and everything and says she is an affiliate of the Mookeeper Association and has been assigned to train there. She seems to be a bit sleepy still, and upon opening her eyes and seeing who she is talking to, she pauses her speech. The boy is petrified after seeing who is at the door, and she asks what he is doing there. Yurong seems to have been expecting her and goes to the door to welcome her. Punrim doesn't understand anything and asks his uncle what is happening there. The man explains that starting today, he will have a colleague from the Exorcist Association since they are both the same age. He thought it would be a good idea, as being alone is terrible. He asks if he forgot to inform the boy about this, and Pundram is already starting to get a stress-induced headache. This started 2 days ago at a meeting of the association. A man from the association reads a paper and says that this concerns the disciplinary deliberation regarding Lee So-ming's actions. A tribunal is taking place about the behaviors the girl exhibited that were against what the association allows. The man questions whether this is enough to strip the exorcist of her qualifications, but they decide to reduce the penalty to community service for the eradication of the spirit of incompetence, and she has also been ordered a transfer to the recovery department. She tries to appeal the decision, but the man says that this decision was made by the disciplinary committee. Desperate, the girl says that she did very well and that she will not cause any more accidents. She asks for another chance. With tears in her eyes, she tries in every way to maintain her position as an exorcist. Then suddenly a friendly hand approaches her shoulder. Yurong steps forward and says that it is not necessary to be so strict as there is a shortage of exorcists these days. Everyone in the tribunal stands up to show respect and calls him master. So Mang seems to know that influential man in the association as well. She knows that he is one of the most skilled exorcists in the world. As he looks at her with a very friendly gaze, she wonders what someone like him is doing there at that moment. And the man asks how old Samong is. She says she is 18 years old, and he is happy to know this, saying that she is the same age as that person. Urian warns that he will take care of the girl, and as an exorcist will also provide training for her. But the man explains that in any case, this student is dealing with a disciplinary action. Uriang asks if she did anything against civilians or any such incident, because losing a talent over this could be very costly in the end, for what should be a priority for the association is to defeat as many spirits as possible. Furthermore, the recovery squad serves a place where those who have become unable to fight due to trauma or injuries live. And he adds that this young lady does not seem to fit those terms. Another man from the tribunal asks if the teacher is willing to do this, so it's fine. The man asks if there is anything specific he needs during this training period, and Yurong says no. The man smiles and says he just needs a little financial help. Everyone thinks at the same time that this sounds quite strange. Back at Pungram's house, he says that his uncle brought a new member into the house without consulting him first, and Urian ends the subject by saying that house belongs to him, and that even the police work in pairs. With his eyes burning with anger, Pundram thinks that he should be the one to work with her. While having some tea, the man asks him not to be so angry. He needs to see her as a partner he can rely on. And as he tries to show the good sides of working in pairs, the boy realizes that he made quite a bit of money from it. So Mang adds that the master is right, and Pund asks since when he is her master. She asks if he is not too old to be called senior, and he says he is only 50 years old. Then Yurong says that since they will be together from now on, it's better to stop arguing and bringing the two young people together. He asks them to hold hands as a sign of camaraderie. So Mang looks into Pungram's furious eyes and says that if he pushes a little harder, he will kill her wide-eyed as if he has lost all hope. He thinks of one thing, that now that he has hit rock bottom, nothing worse can happen. But before the boy could conclude his thoughts, his Uncle Lee appears bringing some sweets as a reward for the last mission. Urian greets the man with a smile and says it's perfect timing. So Mang is also excited with an expression of someone who would rather be dead. Pundram just watches everything in silence. While the three chat casually, his headache begins to intensify. In a kind of garden, someone shouts the name Lee. The girl descends the stairs as the voice is calling for her immediately. The one calling the girl is Pundram, who seems very angry and asks how many times he has to say for her to understand. Pointing to the sink full of dishes, he says she needs to wash the plates after eating. She explains that she was just resting a bit, and he asks if she hasn't rested for more than half the day. Still shouting while she drinks milk straight from the carton, Pundram tells her not to eat with the fridge open because it increases the electricity bill. While she is lying in the room, he comes in complaining about the trash and how her room is a mess. And he also shouts warning that she needs to remove her hair from the drain after showering because it clogs everything. So Mang can't take the shouting anymore and asks what evidence he has that the hair is hers. The boy holds a tuft of purple hair and asks if she is messing with him. The two fight like cat and mouse. Lei is present and asks Yang if it's okay for him not to say anything. And while eating the cookie the police officer brought for the kids, the exorcist says this is how young people make friends. But then a bottle that was part of the fight ends up spilling and flying into the man's head. The bottle flew with such force that it even caused a bump on his head. And that's it. That's the last straw. And he loses his patience, shouting for the two to stop. Now, while giving a good lecture to the young people, he asks if it's right for two almost 19-year-olds to act like this. He adds that this way they won't be able to work together and the next visitors will run away too. So, Mang raises her hand and says she is curious about one thing. She asks if the visitors come directly to go to the exorcism temple. As the name suggests, the temple serves as a place for prayers and requests. But unlike the association, it operates independently and autonomously. They work together with the association but receive direct requests from clients who frequently seek them out. In some cases, it may happen that the request has nothing to do with exorcisms or something like that. And while poking the cheek of the irritated one, Yurong says it's not entirely unfounded. Before the clients visit the exorcism temple, they try every possible method. In the end, they end up resorting to this place as their last hope. Supernatural phenomena that escape people's understanding are usually treated as possessions. And lately it has served as a good source of knowledge and information. So Mang turns her attention to Pungrim, who has had a sour face since they started the topic. Yuriang decides to stop the explanation there and says that the rest she will learn through daily practice, and coincidentally, there are clients coming to visit them soon. Punim is surprised by the speed. The man explains that the world must be going through some difficult time because occurrences have increased significantly, but anyway he asks the two to try to reconcile and get along. So Mang confirms excitedly, and Pundrum just puts his hand on his face. The protagonist wonders why he should take on more work if it's not something he will resolve personally. Leet is returning to his job at the city police station. He climbs the stairs and continues on his way, passing by several people, and when he is checking his watch, someone calls him by name. It's his coworker who asks if he has finished his task for the day. Taking out his phone, the man asks what he wants to eat, and he replies that he wants fried rice. Then when he takes off his jacket to feel more comfortable, he notices that his phone has a notification. It's messages from Sang thanking him for the cookies and showing a picture of Go Pungrim enjoying them too. That image warms the heart of the doting uncle and makes him happy. She says that he always buys delicious things for them, so she is very grateful. His co-worker asks why he looks like a divorced dad talking to the son of the mean woman who has custody. And then the nosy co-worker manages to read the messages and sees the picture of the nephew, becoming very curious. When a guy asks how a gorilla could have such a cute nephew, Lee gets irritated. So after shaking off his co-worker, he rushes to a mirror to see if his appearance resembles Pungrim's. The phone at the station rings, and Leite's co-worker answers promptly. He says it's that person calling again and addresses the person on the other line as teacher, saying you shouldn't be making prank calls. Trying to be understanding, he says he knows he's not joking, but nightmares don't count for reports, but suggesting that he should look for a nearby police station. The person yells on the phone that he has already tried that. Lead approaches and asks what's going on and what that call was about. The man explains that someone has been making several reports of absurd things for a few days now. The person says he has been having the same dreams every night, and in the dream, someone is trying to kill themselves. It seems that the person harbors resentment and wants to seek revenge. Hearing this, Leet starts to sweat. His co-worker continues saying that having recurring dreams is normal and could be memories of something impactful, but Leet asks him to try redialing the number that just called right now. And the man picks up the phone and waits to see if someone answers. Apparently, now no one is answering the calls. Relaxing a bit, the co-worker says it's just a prank, so shouldn't worry so much. But worried, the officer thinks there's no guarantee that these things are false. And since he learned about the existence of these monsters and spirits, all his thoughts end up going in that direction. A man leaning on a table seems to be in a complicated situation. He slams his hand on the table and curses the police for not doing anything to help. Cursing them as bastards and incompetent, he throws everything off the table, making a huge mess. And after his outburst of anger, he says that at this point that bastard will do something. The desperate man puts his hands on his face. His gaze is extremely frightened. Suddenly, his phone starts ringing. He answers promptly, shouting and asking what happened. The person on the other end says he should try going to a hospital first because these things don't make sense. And shouting at the person speaking to him, he asks if Nuna also thinks he's joking. With a lost and desperate look, he says that bastard definitely hired someone to kill him. Trembling and gritting his teeth, he can't take the tension anymore. He's at his limit. The person on the other end asks if the person he's referring to is his rookie in college, and that makes even less sense. He explains that the person he is referring to died 4 months ago. Then he paces back and forth in the room and asks him to give the address. The place is called Jangisa. The man writes down the address with his trembling hand. He has already made contact and asks him to try going to the hospital first, just as Nuna requested. On the paper, the man wrote the address of the exorcism temple located in Seoul. Biting his thumbnail, he feels tense reading that, wondering what it could mean. On his neck, there's a strange mark that seems to have been made with cuts. It is a starry night with a full moon. The sky is clear and bright. The room is a mess. Papers, mugs, pens, everything scattered on the floor. Lying on the bed, the man is sleeping, immersed in his dreams. His hand starts to move in unconscious spasms. He is sweating a lot, probably having a nightmare filled with agony. Calling out Sio Jin Young and LT, Unk and GT's name in his sleep. The man begins to move more, and not knowing for sure if he is asleep or awake, he sits up, putting his hand on his neck and screaming for help. Now he starts to writhe in agony, thrashing on the bed and clutching his neck with both hands. After squeezing his neck tightly, he releases it and begins to drool. Finally, he turns his head to the side, towards the window. At Pungram's house, he asks if the client is unconscious. Urian confirms and says that he has also asked for help from the police. Leach shows the photo and explains that this time the victim is a 32-year-old man named Sang Woo. Suspecting something due to the lack of contact, the family went to visit him to see if everything was okay. But they said he had been sleeping for days and couldn't wake up at all. Normally, they would have suspected health issues, but due to the suspicious behaviors, they reported it again. It is very strange because the victim's physical health is perfect. He just keeps sleeping and won't wake up for anything, but Lee found an address on his desk. And then the officer calls his work friend, who is holding a folder. With a look of disgust, Lead explains that he insisted on coming and participating as well. Lead's partner gets all excited seeing Exorcist for the first time, even asking to take a photo. He also asks if Sang can guess what he is thinking just by looking at his face. Punim closes his eyes and puts his fingers on his head, concentrating. Leite ends up thinking that it might be true, and the boy says that now it seems like he's having a lot of highly unnecessary thoughts. The protagonist takes the folder of files and takes a look, thanking them for bringing it. But he says that no matter how much he looks, he can't see this case as being supernatural or having malevolent spirits. This information leaves Leet completely shocked, but he doesn't insist and just thanks them for the time they provided. Leite's partner is disappointed since they just arrived and didn't ask almost any questions.